Alright, hey guys, we're going to do a quick fiscal policy practice, kind of like the homework that y'all had that you should have already finished, but in case you need a little help, here we go. Alright, so we're starting off with this graph right here. I'm going to go kind of in the format of the homework. So the first question I believe asks is what kind of gap is this? So what kind of gap is that? It is a recessionary gap, so we write recessionary. And sorry, my hand, if it's shaking, it's I've already been recording all day, so eeks. All right, so what kind of policy do we need? What kind of fiscal policy do we need to kick this economy, get it back to full employment? Expansionary or contractionary? So expansionary, right? So whenever we're in a recessionary gap, we need expansionary fiscal policy to get things going. We'll just abbreviate because, you know. Number 3 asks, what are the two options that government has in order to fix the economy using expansionary fiscal policies? For this one, we're talking about government spending and taxation. What are we going to do to government spending and taxation in order to close the gap? So in an expansionary fiscal policy, that means that we need to increase government spending, because remember that government spending is a shifter of aggregate demand. And if we increase government spending, that'll move aggregate demand back to full employment. Taxation, that we're going to decrease. We need to decrease taxes. That way we give the people more money so that they can go out and spend. So that we're talking about consumer spending, messing with consumer spending and how much we have to do, how much less taxes, how much more money we're going to leave in their pockets so they can increase consumer spending. Number 4 asks the change in aggregate demand that is needed. All right, so change in aggregate demand, all we're doing for that one is we're going to subtract the bigger number from the little number. What's the difference between these two numbers? So 1,000 minus, what is that, 500 equals what? 500, right? So the change in aggregate demand that we need is $500. Remember that due to the multiplier effect, we can't just increase government spending by $500 or decrease taxes by $500 because we would get, our equilibrium somewhere out here, and that's not what we want. We know that our marginal propensity to consume, or how much people spend rather than save when there's a change in income, is 0.8. So the first thing that we need to do is calculate our spending multiplier. Which is, since they give us the MPC, that means we're going to be using this equation, 1 over 1 minus MPC, which is equal to 1 over 1 minus 0.8. So if we change that into a little 10 minus 8 is what? Is 0.2. So this is still in fraction form. We still have a 0.2 in the denominator, and we got to get rid of that. So we change that into a fraction. So get rid of that decimal and change it into a fraction. Because the 2 was in the 10th place, that's why we put it over 10. Can we reduce this? Yes. We can reduce it to 1 over 5. So again, we have a fraction in the denominator, and we have to get rid of that. So what we do is we do the reciprocal. So I'll move down here because I don't have space. So, sorry, trying to, 1 over 1 times the reciprocal of this is 5 over 1, and then we just multiply across, gives us a multiplier of 5. Remember to show your work on your homework or it's counted wrong. The next thing, number 6, we're going to do is calculate our tax multiplier. So our tax multiplier is super easy because all it is the equation is negative, open parentheses, spending multiplier minus 1, close parentheses. So our spending multiplier, we said in the previous number 5, was 5. So negative, open parentheses, 5 minus 1 gives us a tax multiplier of negative 4. Okay, number 7 is the change in government spending that we need. How much government spending do we need to increase by in order to close this gap and take us back to full employment? So change in government spending is equal to the change in aggregate demand that we want over the spending multiplier. Sorry for my penmanship, I'm trying to rush through this. Alright, so change in aggregate demand, we already calculated it up here. We said it was going to be $500. So we just plug that in. $500. And I'm just making all of these in billions, so you can put a little b there if you want. Spending multiplier, which we said was 5. So 500 divided by 5 is $100 billion. That's just for government spending. We also need to figure out, we said that they could also decrease taxes. So number 8 is change in tax. Again, that's the change in aggregate demand divided by the tax multiplier. So change in aggregate demand is the same from before, the $500 billion, $500, divided by your tax multiplier, which we said was -4. So 500 divided by 4 is 125 negative. So we need to decrease taxation by $125 billion. And if my math is wrong, sorry y'all. Okay, makes sense. Let's try another one. So again, here is your start off point. We're asking the exact same questions. Our MPS this time is 0.5. We are at 100 billion, and what kind of gap is this? Inflationary gap, right? So that's the first question. Again, you can pause the video, try it out for yourself, try to solve it out. Inflationary gap. And then see if you did it right once. Let it play and see how you did it right. So what kind of policy do we need in order to close an inflationary gap? We need contractionary fiscal policy. What do we need to do to government spending, and what do we need to do to taxes? So in order to close this gap, we need to decrease government spending. That way aggregate demand will move to the left. It'll decrease. So decrease government spending. Or we could increase taxes. So that would be less money in people's pockets. So that means consumer spending would decrease and aggregate demand again would shift to the left and going to take us back to full employment. Number 4 is that we need to calculate our spending multiplier. Okay, so this time we were given an MPS of 0.5. So MPS, marginal propensity to save. We're saying people are going to save half and spend half. So the equation is 1 over MPS, which is a little bit simpler than the MPC one. We just skipped the very first step. So we put 1 over 0.5. Again, we cannot have a decimal in the denominator, so we need to turn it into a fraction and get it out of there. The 5 was in the 10th place, that's why we put it over 10. And can we reduce? Yes, we can reduce to 1/2. So again, we still have a fraction. We need to get rid of it, do the whole reciprocal deal. So 1 over 1 times 2 over 1 gives us a spending, oops, sorry guys. This gives us a spending multiplier of 2. Alrighty, number 5. we need to calculate the tax multiplier. And again, that is negative spending multiplier minus 1, close parentheses. So okay, sorry about that. So negative, the spending multiplier was 2 minus 1 gives us a tax multiplier of negative 2. Negative 1, sorry. Okay, number 6. We're doing the... Did I skip a step? I skipped a step. Oh my goodness. Y'all didn't tell me. I skipped. Let's just do it right here. Is step number 6. The change in aggregate demand that we need. So again, all we're going to do is subtract the bigger number from the little number. So 100 minus 80. Always showing our work is 20. Let's just say $20. Okay, so now moving on to step 7, the change in government spending that we need. Again, that is the change in aggregate demand over the spending multiplier. So the change in aggregate demand that we need is $20 divided by our spending multiplier, which we said was 2. So that gives us, if we're going to decrease government spending, we need to decrease it by $10. It's gonna be billions, because come on, it's GDP. 8, the change in taxes that we need. So that one is change in aggregate demand over the tax multiplier. So change in aggregate demand that we need, again, is at $20. Our tax multiplier, we said, is negative 1. So 20 divided by negative 1 is just negative 20. And there you go. Let's do another one. Okay, so this time we got an MPC of 0.9. We are currently at $100 billion and we need to be at $50 billion. So what kind of gap is this? It's an inflationary gap. What kind of policy do we need for an inflationary gap? We need contractionary fiscal policy. We need to slow things down. And then what do we need to do to government spending and taxation? Again, we need to decrease government spending and we need to increase our taxes. That's a weird arrow. Okay. Number 4 is the change in aggregate demand that we need. So again, the difference between the two. So 100 minus 50. Yes, gives us $50 billion. Number 5, the spending multiplier. So again, we were given an MPC of 0.9. So an MPC means we're going to be using 1 over 1 minus MPC. Again, you can pause. Try to calculate yourself. So 1 over 1 minus, we said 0.9. So it's 10. 10 minus 9 equals 0.1. Because it's whole number minus 0.9. Again, we do not need a decimal in the denominator, so we got to get rid of that. Because it was in the 10th place, that's why we put it over 10. Can we reduce from here? No, that's as small as it's going to go. So from here, then we just do the reciprocal. So it's 1 over 1 times 10 over 1 gives us a spending multiplier of 10. Number 6, now we calculate the tax multiplier. So this is that super simple one of negative, open parentheses, spending multiplier minus 1. So negative 10, which is our spending multiplier, minus 1, gives us a tax multiplier of negative 9. Okay. 7, we need to calculate how much we're going to decrease government spending by. And the equation for that is change in aggregate demand over our spending multiplier. Which is equal to change in aggregate demand that we need, we said was $50 billion, divided by our spending multiplier, which we said was 10. So 50 divided by 10 is $5 billion if we're going to change government spending or decrease government spending. 8, change in tax that we need is the change in aggregate demand over our tax multiplier is equal to, again, the $50 divided by our tax multiplier, which we said was negative 9. So 50 divided by 9 is 5.5555. It's 5 point. Sounds good. Okay, and last one. All right, so MPC of 0.5. We are at 800 and we need to be at 1,000. All right, first question. Again, remember you can pause and try and solve this yourself, or I go over it. Just make sure you're doing everything right. So the first question is, what kind of gap is this? This is a recessionary gap. What kind of policy do we need in order to close this recessionary gap and get us back to full employment? We need expansionary fiscal policy. And what do we need to do to government spending and taxation? We need to increase government spending and or decrease taxation. Number 4 is, what is the change in aggregate demand that we need? Again, that's just the difference between where we're at and where we need to be. So 1,000 minus 800 is what? $200 billion. 5, the spending multiplier. So we were given an MPC of 0.5. So we use the 1 over 1 minus MPC. So we just plug in the numbers. 1 over 1 minus 0.5 is equal to, so if this was a 10, whole number minus 0.5, so it's 1 over 0.5. Again, we can't have a fraction in the denominator, so we got to get rid of that and turn it into a fraction. Because the 5 was in the 10th place, we put it over 10. Can we reduce? Yes, we can, to 1/2. And then again, we cannot have a fraction in the denominator, so we have to do the reciprocal, which is 1/1 times 2/1 gives us a multiplier of 2. Next step is calculating the tax multiplier. So that is negative spending multiplier minus 1. So plug in the numbers. Negative, we said a spending multiplier was 2 minus 1 gives us again a tax multiplier of negative 1. Now to go ahead and calculate how much do we need to increase government spending by. So that's change in aggregate demand over our spending multiplier which is equal to a change in aggregate demand that we need is 200. So 200 divided by our spending multiplier, which we said was 2. So 200 divided by 2 is $100 billion. Now for the change in tax that we need is a change in aggregate demand over the tax multiplier. So change in aggregate demand again is the same as above, 200 divided by our tax multiplier, which was negative 1. So the change in tax that we need is negative $200. Oops. Alright guys, I hope this helped you out. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm here to help. Alright, see you.